Welcome to another 8 Habits of an Effective Recruiter webinar. I'm your host, Dan Harten, and I lead the customer marketing team here at Hire Easy. And over the last couple weeks, we interviewed multiple recruiters at different stages in their career to understand what are the habits that make up an effective recruiter in today's landscape in 2024. And this week, we want to go over of finding existing resources or tools or learning opportunities to stay ahead of the game. Every interview that we conducted, every single person said, "Hey, I'm always looking to get better. What's next upcoming in this industry, just so I can be in the know to help my team and my career flourish." And when I break that down, I think there's 3 areas that I want to highlight and dive deeper. One is conferences. That's in-person conferences, that's virtual conferences, and getting involved in just in the conference setting. It sometimes was maybe a little dead the last couple years, but if you are on social media or LinkedIn, I feel like every post now is all about this next upcoming conference and people getting involved. The second one is education or some sort of an academy feel for courses to better understand how to get better at recruiting role, sourcing role, leadership role, and so on. And then the third one is I want to dabble into some of the tools, the resources that I have used in the past to stay ahead of the game. But if any of these 3 topics that I start talking about, it's just me today. So if you have insights, you want to throw it in the chat, you want to come on and be a speaker and kind of highlight some of the things that you're doing, feel free to do that. Throw that in the chat and I can bring you up on a guest. But the first one, I before we dive in, I want to take a deep breath and I want to peel back the onion a little bit, one step further and talk about kind of the turning point in my career that happened a couple of years ago. Again, conferences, academy, education, tools, resources, that's all well said and good. But to be a good to great recruiter, I think it's taking a little different lens at it of saying, hey, this is my craft. If you study any high performers in the industry, I'll just take athletes because the Olympics was just on, the last couple of weeks. But those individuals trained every single day and practice every single day to go into their event for one shot at gold. But do we actually look at that into our own career and practice every single day to get better at our craft and looking at it as more of a career versus more of a career rather than just a job? I feel like I got in the mode early on in my career that it was just a job and I get overwhelmed with rec flow, hiring manager, kind of breathing down my throat, and it was just, fill a rec, on to the next one, fill a rec, on to the next one. And it wasn't until I said, hey, I'm going to set some time away from my day-to-day duties to try to get better at my craft and really look at this as this is my full-time job. And I'm going to practice daily. I'm going to be in the know and really elevate my career. I'd love to hear from people in the chat of, have you had a similar experience? Do you set some time every single week? Maybe it's daily, weekly, monthly to say, I'm going to control my own career and develop myself. Throw in the chat, maybe you do, maybe you don't, but that's one of the things that through the interviews, people set time for their personal career to grow. The first one I want to talk about is conferences. And I can kind of share my screen too. But let's see here. Step 3. The one thing I do here at Hire Easy is, I'll throw that here. Can everybody see my screen? Maybe throw it in the chat. Perfect. Is Hire Easy RecruitCon. I think there's so many conferences out there. And the reality is if you're currently working at a company and you typically don't have budget for training and development resources right now, and you're not going to go to a conference that's in person or virtual, that does cost a lot of money. And what I saw was there is a need within our recruiting industry right now that needed a place for professionals to grow their career, but maybe they don't have the funds right now to go to an in-person conference. So that's why I created the Hire Easy Recruit Con this year. It's 100% free for anybody to attend. And we have some pretty big names of speakers that had been doing speaking circuits at those paid conferences. And they were humbled enough to say, hey, there's a need in this industry. I want to give back to the community and have it 100% free. And that's the vision, that's my passion, that's the reason why I do all of this stuff is to give back. So you have guys like Mike Wolford, Brian Fink, um, all these individuals, they have hearts of gold that really want to increase the level of ownership within this recruiting community, not just now, but for years to come. So if you haven't signed up for this yet, please, please, please do so. I'll give you a little backstory on me. I was been in the recruiting industry my whole career. Unfortunately, I did get laid off at Meta or Facebook about a year and a half ago. And I was kind of in a point where I didn't know what to do. I was a fork in the road of saying, hey, do I pivot? Do I stay in recruiting? What should I do? And how do I get noticed? There's people on the call probably right now that are searching for that next opportunity. And conferences actually propelled me to get this job that I have right now. And I'll give you the story is I didn't know what to do, so I kind of reached out trying to network, and I realized SourceCon was here in Minneapolis. And I got uncomfortable, I got vulnerable, and I said, "Hey, how do I get involved and I can network with individuals that are actually at the conference?" So I had an opportunity to be part of the Greet Squad. And the Greet Squad is you show up early, you stay late, you set things up, you make sure that people are having a great experience at that conference. While I was able to attend some of the sessions. As I was attending one of the sessions, it was all about AI and how to maximize your potential within this industry. And I took a little different way of how I utilize ChatGPT in my job search. And one of the individuals that was running the conference, his name was Paul. You might have seen him on Recruiter Therapy. I didn't know him personally before that conference, but during that conference, I pulled him to the side and said, "Hey, this is how I'm actually utilizing it in my job search and applying to jobs and messaging the hiring manager using my sourcing and recruiting abilities, defining that contact information, doing a drip campaign specifically towards that manager to get notice in my job application because there's thousands of other job applications with mine." And he said, "Hey, Dan, I want you to stop. We have a 10-minute window that could you please just share that with the whole conference?" And I was like, "Oh, I've never spoken at this big of a crowd before. Are you sure?" And he said, "Yes, I want you to do that." And I said, "Okay, I'll take that opportunity to voice what I've done that's successful." And in that 10-minute window, I shot an email to a hiring manager that I applied to their role. And within 2 minutes, I got a reply back. I said, "Thanks for your email. I'll forward this information along." And it was kind of an aha moment for the whole conference. And I said, "Okay, this is awesome. Like it helped other people. This is what I'm passionate about." But conferences, if I didn't attend and get vulnerable and have the connections with those individuals that were right there, I probably wouldn't have gotten this job. Because what happened was Paul maybe knew some people within the industry. Paul knew maybe my future boss, which he did, and said, "Hey, Dan had some really cool things to say. Maybe you should interview him for this marketing role." when I didn't have any type of marketing, customer marketing experience at all. So conferences, I think, is a huge impact for your career, and not just of the information that you have in front of you that you learn, but it's the connections that go beyond kind of a handshake. A couple good ones too is obviously we had TA week last about 2 weeks ago. Um, we have RecruitCon coming up, SourceCon is coming up. And what I would do is I would challenge you guys to just get involved. And the best way to do that too is try to peel back the onion a little bit and try to connect with those speakers. Try to connect and get involved and volunteer. If you're on this chat on the side right now and you want to get involved, reach out to me. For many years, there's probably 12 to 15 presenters that speak at these conferences day in and day out. And I think there's new voices that are coming that, just like in the Olympics, they're going to pass the baton to the next generation. So that's what I'm doing. I want to search for you guys because you guys have some awesome things to say. So if you're interested, please DM me, connect with me on LinkedIn, and help me understand what your passion is and how you can get involved. So that's conferences. Throw in the chat what other conferences that maybe I'm missing that are free, or other resources that people can get tapped into, that can help each other. So throw in the chat right now of maybe your favorite conference you've been attending, whether it's virtual or in person. Jessica says personal development is a key point in weekly agendas and a focal point in the way I lead my recruiting team. Love it. We even evaluate it during annual performance reviews. Love it. Love it. Love it. The second thing I want to talk about is education and academy. Here at Hire Easy, I'll throw it in the chat, but we have the Outbound Recruiting Academy. And if you're not familiar with this, I can share my screen. Just give me a second. Here's the Outbound Recruiting Academy, and I'll throw this in the chat room. But it's 100% free courses that are both obviously product if you are a Hire Easy user, but we have skill-based courses here that gives you a good understanding of what the market is and how it can elevate your team. So for example, Steve Levy, I'm sure you guys are familiar with him. He did a course that's Mastering Market Research and Talent Acquisition. I believe it's a 2-part, about 10-minute long courses, but take a look at that course, dive in, and he gives you practical opportunities to elevate your career of understanding what market research is. One of the topics in the webinar, or the 8 Habits of Effective Recruiter blog that they wrote with all this information for this interviews of these recruiters, they said that the number one thing to be a good to great recruiter is being a true business partner and a talent advisor to your hiring managers. And the only way you're going to be able to do that is to understand from others and leaders within our industry what's that landscape. And this is 100% free. Like I said, at Hire Easy, we want to give you resources 100% free, so it doesn't disclude anybody that maybe can't afford it. Everybody's equal here, and we want to give you that opportunity to dive in. Obviously, there's other courses. SourceCon has some courses. I think it's called Udemy, or I always butcher that name. But those are other key takeaways of getting involved. Says, hi, there are so many free webinars that I see on my newsfeed. If you sign up, you get the recording if you're not available to watch it live. That is absolutely great advice, Eddie. We always put our webinars, any conferences, anything like that on our YouTube page. And that actually rolls into kind of the third bucket is the landscape of there's so much information overload and education out there of what's good, what's not, and how are we actually receiving the information and consuming the information. I think a couple of the big different differentiators in the last 5 to 10 years is raise your hand or put it in the chat of does somebody on here listen to any type of podcast? For me, I was never a book reader. I'm trying to challenge myself and try to read, a couple books a quarter. But for me, time is valuable. I have 5 kiddos at home. But what I can do is I can listen to a recruiting podcast when I'm mowing the lawn or if I'm in the car on my commute or whatever it may be. And consuming that knowledge is key for my success of understanding what other people are thinking, what other people are doing within this recruiting industry. A couple ones that I really, really, really like, um, and I'll throw it in. I'll share my screen. I'll give you guys some insight. One is the recruit or elite recruiter podcast with Ben Mina. He actually did a conference last week to um, that showcases all of the tech tools of companies of what's happening right now. All of this AI and all of this AI stuff, what to choose from. If you're a leader that's looking for some tech tool, what's your tech stack, all of that. He put on a whole conference that was 100% free for that. But he also does an Elite Recruiter podcast that drops every week. It's geared more towards um, agency recruiting, but he also touches on a couple other ones. And it's a really, really good tool, podcast that I listen to. The next one, as you might probably see, is the Chat and Cheese podcast. They do a little different flair of that. Ben's is more of an interview back and forth, but Chat and Cheese dives into topics that what is happening within the landscape of recruiting. The next one that I think is really good is recruiting brain food. So right here, so that's some information. I would download some of that. And again, it's really nice if you're sourcing your recruiting and you're dialed in. You can throw in your headphones and just listen in the background. That's what I mainly do. Is I try to consume information all day long because it's going to give me the information, but then the creativity of, hey, he used this in this situation, she used this in this situation. How do I apply that to my recruiting? It may be agency, it might be corporate, it might be a different industry, but can I apply that same thing that they had success with within my team? The last one I'll share is obviously the Speakeasy podcast. That's the one that we do and I host. And what I would love to do is I bring industry leaders. For example, Kim Wilkes, she's the head of talent attraction at Zapier. AI is a huge, huge, huge thing right now. Automation is huge, and it's being a disruptor within the recruiting industry. So take a look at that of how to get ahead of the game. What is a company like Zapier that's all about automation? How are they implementing recruiting and sourcing from an automation standpoint? So the other thing is just YouTube channels. If you have any YouTube channels, anything like that that you are really wanting people to know about that do a really, really good job, Amy Miller is one example. Is she does a fantastic job of understanding kind of what the recruiting landscape is, and she's very, very different on her approach on her YouTube. So take a look at Amy Miller. She's actually speaking at the Recruit Con as well next week, which is pretty cool. Here's the chat. It says Resilient Recruiter by Mark Whitby. Fantastic. Jessica, might be a bit of a spin, but we listen to podcasts that focus on leadership development skills. Craig Rochelle is our favorite. Love it. We found that enhancing leadership skills makes us better recruiters all around. 100%. Like I said, going back to the good to great recruiters, it's being a talent advisor and being a leader. So you have a stake in the game when you're talking to leaders. And then if they buy in and they believe in you and they trust you, you can make so much cool things happen within your organization because you're a partner to them versus just an order taker. The last thing I want to touch on, and maybe you guys are familiar with this, maybe not. But the one thing I want to touch on is the tools, the resources. A lot of people right now maybe don't have the budget for tools and resources and how to stay ahead of the game. And I'll give this analogy. Let me take a drink first. But I took the kids to a racetrack close by our house. And what we saw was, if you are familiar with the word drafting, it's and you could do it in maybe even a car ride. And you go right behind a semi, or these cars come right behind the car that's right in front of them, and they essentially get really, really close to eliminate the wind from them so they can go faster. And at that point, when they have all that information, or in our sense, recruiting it, they have the information, then they propel themselves in front of that recruiting car, quote unquote, recruiting car. And what I love to do is, maybe I'm not the person that's creating these newest technologies or newest way of strategies or recruiting to kind of disrupt the industry. But for me, if I know who are the bigger players to do that, I'm gonna jump ahead and be a resource to my organization because I know what's going on. The one thing that I want to share eh, is is anybody familiar with, maybe throw it in the chat, is okay, there's one, okay, start.me's. So if you want to go into your Google right now and you type in site:start.me, and then recruiting or sourcing or talent acquisition or talent or HR. What this string is going to do is, start.me is a place, a resource that essentially consolidates all of the resources that people are using, and they build up a page for resources for other people. So if I do site:start.me and then recruiting, sourcing, talent acquisition, etc., it's going to give me all of this information. The first one I do is I bring up Erin Matthew. Erin Matthew is a principal executive recruiter at PayPal. She's a multiple time SourceCon speaker. She does the SourceCon hackathons. She's actually speaking at RecruitCon next week as well. But essentially, this is 100% free, that she's put all her resources of how sourcing and recruiting platforms, articles, blogs, presentation resources, research tools, other toolboxes, anything and everything. This is 100% free that she's giving back to the community. Another one that pops up is maybe for a human resource one. So human resources recruitment. There's research steps of step 1, step 2, step 3. Gives you resources and gives you a head start on what has done before and what's been successful, so you can implement that into your own organization. The next one is Tom Julian. He's more on the higher education sector in recruiting and sourcing, but he gives you contact information tools that you can utilize, Boolean string techniques, messaging and marketing strategies. All of this is very, very helpful. He has layoff, company tracking. All this information is right here at the tip of your hands. So what I would do is I would do that site:start.me, put in a Boolean search and save these so you can be an expert on your craft. You know, Erin Matthew again, Dean DaCosta has one as well. Let's see. So I can just put Dean DaCosta. Okay, he's right here. So Dean DaCosta, he's obviously a wealth of knowledge, and he puts everything right here. So all this information is really, really good information for you to save and utilize later. So when your leader is saying, "Hey, what do you think about this industry? Is there a tool? There's a resource. There's a free extension." You can go here and see what the professionals are saying and draft some of these experts in the field of what's happening. Maybe raise your hand or throw it in the chat. Does anybody utilize this right now, or have heard about Start.me's? Okay, this is new to me. Perfect. I can see. Perfect. New to me as well. Awesome. That's what I wanted to hear. Are you able to create our own Start.me? Correct. You can. You can go to Start.me, create your own page. I believe it's 100% free, but you can start creating that yourself, because then if you change organizations, you have all your resources and tools and YouTube links and all of this stuff that is beneficial for you and your team that you can utilize for the future. So then it would be kind of on your computer, your website, all this information that you can take that resource for you. Angelica, same, perfect. That's awesome. The last thing I want to share, I know we're running out of time, but the last thing I want to share is are you guys familiar with Apollo.io? Now, there's a free version of this, and whether you are maybe don't have a budget from a sourcing and a tools and a resources standpoint of trying to find contact information or building out org charts at companies that you're targeting, or utilizing the strategy of we're all recruiters, we're all sourcers, and you're trying to elevate your game of trying to get that interview, what I would do is I would download Apollo.io. And let's just say I'm targeting a role at Hire Easy. You can type in Hire Easy, click here. And what it's going to do is going to give you names, titles, the company, access email. You only get so many amount that's free. But let's just say, I want to, look up a specific person on there. There's job titles, companies. All of this is, think of it this way. It's like a crunch base for and utilize that in the mindset of recruiting. A lot of sales people out there utilize this platform at their company. But we can use this because at the end of the day, recruiting is sales. So trying to find that contact information, trying to find who the people are that are working at those companies, this is a way to elevate your game, and it's 100% free. So I would strongly encourage you that if you don't have access to this, sign up. It's 100% free. And then it just gives you one more step in that cadence of whether it's targeting, finding information, building out an org chart, or finding that next opportunity. Like I did when I was searching for that next role. I downloaded the individuals that I want to network with, found their contact information, and then sent them a personal email of saying, hey, who I was, why am I contacting them? I'd love to work for their company, etc. So anybody in the chat, anybody have ever used Apollo.io? I have not. Okay. It's a really cool tool if your company or yourself, if you're on your own, trying to find that contact information and you don't want to pay for it. Obviously, there's a short amount of information that they'll give you, but it's a start. I think you get X amount of credits per month to really elevate that. Steve, this is new to me. Awesome. Awesome. Fantastic. Well, I know we're over, but is there any questions in the chat? Anything else that you guys want to, any questions on or anything like that? If not, I can start putting all those links within the chat right now. And here is the search string for the start.me's. I would save that. Apollo.io. I'll throw that in the chat. I'll throw some of the podcast stuff in there. Here. I'll throw the conference in here as well. And then here is the 8 Habits blog that we originally wrote. But at the end of the day, really focus on, is this going to be your craft in your career? And I would encourage you to practice daily of figuring out what's ahead of the game and really draft some of those big players within our space. So you are the expert. So when you go back to your company, you can start teaching, and it's going to be a ripple effect. And you're kind of the subject matter expert. It's the people that are really, really good at this. It's not the people that are creating all this sometimes. It's, are they putting themselves in a position to learn from the best so they can be the best? And in this recruiting industry, people are always welcome to give back and help each other grow. And that's what I love about this. Again, all the resources, all the things that we do here at Hire Easy is 100% free. And I'm always looking for people to kind of go above and beyond and get out of their comfort zone and willing to speak. So if you're interested in any of that, please reach out to me personally on my LinkedIn. And then here's the academy that's 100% free for you and your teams. So if you run a team and you want them to get involved, it's 100% free for them. What was the website again for Tom Julian? Perfect. I will give it to you right now. Here is the HR one. And then here's Tom's. And Tom does higher education. So he's at Johns Hopkins right now. Awesome. Any other questions as we wrap up? Awesome. This will be recorded and put on YouTube. Thanks. Okay, perfect. Yeah, Aaron, David, thank you so much for attending. It should be up in the next couple days. Hopefully we see you at RecruitCon next week. Because of the time, there will not be a webinar next week for this, but attend RecruitCon instead. So, any tips on how to organize all this knowledge? So what I would do is the start.me is a really good help to organize everything. What I would do is I would save all of those and just kind of create what you want. If you want to create your own, take little bits of each person of what's helpful for you and your industry, and then create your own of how to organize that. As you see, some of these other ones on here, they have, presentation. Think of it like recruiting and sourcing. So like peel back the actual things that you're doing on a day-to-day, whether it's sourcing resources, tools, contact finding, messaging, all of those different things, research, maybe break it down based on whatever role you are, and then have those be your categories, and then you can start implementing things in and putting them in there. Awesome. Well, have a fantastic rest of your Tuesday, a better rest of the week. And if you guys need anything, feel free to message me, connect with me, and we will see you guys all next week at RecruitCon. Thanks, guys.